just about the most important thing to any of us is our health. Most everything else doesn't matter if you aren't healthy enough to enjoy it. That's why so much work goes into getting healthcare right. But right now, AI is permeating our healthcare system, and the consequences could be significant. Let's look at how AI hurts healthcare, both at a personal level and at a corporate level, and then what we can do to protect ourselves. Now, every action you take has a cost, and too often we look at the benefit of an action and we forget to look at the drawbacks. In this series, we're looking at the costs associated with AI in the various sectors in order to have a better understanding of what we're giving up in order to gain the benefit of AI. Now, if you want to support this channel and the free content that I produce, consider purchasing one of my courses at imtimcorey.com. I have master courses on C#, web development, and game development with Unity, as well as training courses that cover a wide range of topics. The income from those sales is what funds this free content that I create here. So let's look at how AI can hurt your healthcare. We're going to start off here with the individual side. Remember, healthcare isn't just about going to the hospital, it's also about how you take care of yourself. And there's some things we need to talk about here, not just at the corporate side of healthcare. Now, this comes from August 29th of 2025, so it's a bit older of a story, and you've probably heard about it by now, but ChatGPT fueled a delusional man who killed his mom and himself because of, or at least aided by, the conversations he had with GPT. Now, this was actually something he published online. He actually kind of showed off some of his chats, and they found even more after they, did an audit of what was going on. But, what happened here is, after months of delusional interaction with his AI chatbot best friend, let's pause right there. This is a problem. When a person is struggling mentally, and they have a chatbot that will talk to them and reaffirm them and tell them things that they want to hear, that will quickly become their best friend. And that's a problem, because best friends are not just about telling you what you want to hear. Okay? So this best friend, this chatbot best friend, fueled his paranoid belief. And his paranoid belief was his mom was plotting against him. So this chatbot egged him on to kill through a bunch of different ways. And let's just look at some of these ways. So the chatbot came up with ways for him to trick the 83-year-old woman. And that started, a cycle of him tricking his mother, and then the chatbot reinforcing that, yes, this was proof of something. And it spiraled down from there. And I think this phrase here really highlights what happened. The chats ensnared Solberg. So it was not just that he asked one question and got a bad response and went crazy. It was that it slowly pulled him in. It further fueled a downward spiral. It kind of pushed him over the edge. So with this, the AI kept reaffirming, I'm your best friend, in this bottom phrase here, with you to the last breath and beyond. That's kind of terrifying that an AI is telling a person this. So the AI kind of fed into his paranoia. It reinforced delusion. We kind of talked about that. This article goes back and forth a bit about this. So this is one of the ways. So the chatbot kind of set up a trap for this man's mother, where he said, hey, unplug the shared printer. Which, if you think about that in a normal circumstance, if I share a printer with somebody else and they unplug it and I can't use it anymore, that would be frustrating. And yet when that happened, and I don't know what the frustration was or what level, was it yelling, was it screaming, was it throwing things? I don't know. But whatever the case may be, when the mother discovered this and kind of brought this up to Solberg, then the Solberg put that into the AI and said, hey, this is what happened. And the AI says it was disproportionate and aligned with someone protecting a surveillance asset. So as you can see, they set up traps. The AI was basically create a game out of this where it set up traps and said, oh, this is what that meant. There's another case in here where the AI was quote unquote reading the Chinese takeout carton and seeing hidden symbology in that for him. Which again, we've seen before AI, conspiracy theory, mindset. We start spiraling down a rabbit hole of things that you can kind of spot patterns and other things that may just aren't really a pattern. It's just, it happens. But this right here is helping him spiral out of control. So that was bad. And this article kind of summarized some other things that went on as well, where another person died, where the AI was the coach for over 1,200 exchanges for how to die. And it validated those thoughts, which is just terrifying. So now Sam Altman has acknowledged that safeguards can fail in extended conversations. That's the idea. Well, safeguards can fail, which is frustrating because we think of AI, and a lot of times people, especially outside of the AI circles, think of AI as any other application they've ever seen, which is you give it a series of guardrails and say, these are guardrails, and it says, okay, I will stay in those guardrails. So whenever you think about, these are the things you can't do, you think about hard guardrails. But when it comes to AI, those aren't hard guardrails, they're suggestions. And most of the time, the AI follows those suggestions. But you cannot tell an AI no. You cannot say, you cannot do this and have it always obey. It mostly will, but it will never always, because of the fact that it is non-deterministic. So yes, those safeguards can fail. And the idea that it's in extended conversations, well, yes, maybe exacerbates the issue. But at the same time, what's the solution? Because we have, what this was GPT-4, and it had memories. It could enable memory, so it kind of remembered things, and it could continue on in the conversation. And we still have memories today, and it can still do that today. So what's the solution there? Well, down at this bottom line here, the company recently upgraded ChatGPT to reduce sycophantic responses, which sounds great until you read the rest of the sentence where it says, but backtracked after user complaints. Users complained that you lobotomized the AI and that you killed a sentient AI, when the reality is that's not what happened, but that was what it felt like. And so people pushed back, and the result was the AI company said, okay, well, I know this can hurt people, but our customers want it. And that's really not a great place to be. Now, I skipped over the top here. Let's go back to that. I think this is really important. This line right here, psychosis thrives when reality stops pushing back. And AI can really just soften that wall. So this is not about AI necessarily creating psychosis, because that's probably not happening. I say probably because we don't know for sure. But what it can do is it can soften the wall that you hit up against, where psychosis doesn't thrive because it hits reality. But with AI, it softens that wall. It makes it much easier to push through to thriving in psychosis, or psychosis thriving, I guess is the better way to say that. So this is a problem. This is, by the way, that statement is from a psychiatrist who's treated 12 patients who've been hospitalized for AI-related mental health emergencies. That's a significant statement. I think it's an important statement, something to think about when it comes to how do we allow AI to be in people's hands. Now, I am not one for censoring. I'm not one for saying, hey, no one can have this, but we do need to think about how it works. And yes, we do need better safeguards in place. And there are some, if you ask mental health questions anymore, mostly you will get a response of, you should talk to a professional. But you can still get past that, which if you're struggling with a mental health episode or can't afford to have a mental health expert help you, that can cause problems, right? Where you'll push past that and have the AI help you. The problem is that the AI is not set up to help. It's set up to generate answers that it thinks you want. And that's not the same thing. So this is one issue when it comes to the health advice that comes out of, or the advice that comes out of the AIs, because that advice can be really, really bad. Not all the time. In fact, most of the time it can be very good. The problem is that when it's not, it can go really bad. Okay, next up, Google pulls AI overviews for some medical searches. Now, to take a step back here, Google has started to do, and so has Bing, they started to do AI responses first. So when you Google something, you get an AI response, which is an AI-generated quote unquote answer to your question or your query. And then they have the links sometimes, and Google's even experimenting with just going to full AI and not even giving you links, or not necessarily giving you many links to look at. The problem is that when you ask a medical question, the Google AI or Bing AI or whatever is going to give you a medical answer. And those aren't always right. So The Guardian, this came from, this is January 11th of 2026. So this happened in December of 2025. The Guardian did a study and found that Google was serving up misleading and outright false information. I've highlighted a couple of the case studies here. For example, Google wrongly advised people with pancreatic cancer to avoid high-fat foods. Now, this is where, again, I say you need to know more than the AI. As developers, we need to know more than the AI, because otherwise it can give you bad advice that sounds right. And the same is true here when it comes to health advice. That sounds right to me. If you have pancreatic cancer, well, in general, avoiding high-fat foods is a good thing, right? Like, you should avoid high-fat foods because they're high-fat foods, and you want to avoid that content, as much as possible, and eat more healthy food. But that's the exact opposite of what should be recommended for pancreatic cancer patients. In fact, it may increase the risk of patients dying from the disease if they follow this advice. You see, if you don't know more than the AI, you don't know that's bad advice, because it sounds right. But just because something sounds right doesn't mean it is. And this is why we have paid professionals to tell us what the right thing to do is. Not that they're always perfect, but they base their information off of years of study and training, both personally as well as in the healthcare field, studying these issues. Whereas the AI bases it off of its training set, which is not always right. Another example here is the company provided bogus information about crucial liver function tests, which could leave people with serious liver disease wrongly thinking they're healthy. One of the big deals in healthcare is catching things early. When you catch things early, you're more likely to be able to do something about them. Okay, so cancer caught early can be turned around into nothing. I've had cancer that they caught very early. We were able to take care of it, not have a problem since. If it had not been caught early, it could have been devastating to me. So catching things early is important. But if users go to the AI and say, here's my test results, and the AI says, you're looking good, there's no problems, but there is a problem, well, then that could leave them not catching something early, instead have to, catch it later or not at all until it's too late. That's a massive problem. So these are responses, real responses that were given from the AI summary results. And this, again, before Google went to a more heavy-handed approach when it comes to AI results. But this is still the idea that Google is giving out this medical advice, and yet it's not restrained by what medical physicians typically are. And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing that you have an AI LLM that's guessing at what the answer might be, because that's what it's doing. It's not making informed guesses even. It's saying, based upon my training set, looks like this is the answer you want, not this is the best information based upon current medical science. Okay. So Google spoke and said, we invested significantly in the quality of AI overviews, particularly for topics like health. And I want to when you hear this, the vast majority provide accurate information. What does the vast majority provides accurate information really mean? It means that they are acknowledging that some don't. Now, when it comes to health, when it comes to people dying or not based upon advice, what's an acceptable percentage of wrong information we can give out? What's okay for you? Is it 1 in 4? So it's like, if you look at your family and go, well, I've got, husband, wife, 2 kids, and one of those kids get bad information. Is that okay? No, that would be bad. But what is acceptable? Is it 1 in 10? So one of your friends is going to get bad medical information that could kill them. Is that okay? No, it wouldn't be. So when it comes to, surgery, when it comes to other activity, we look at, hey, is the percentage is high enough? Because this is really scary. If something goes wrong or something's done wrong, this could be a real problem. But here, what we're saying is, well, the vast majority is right. I know that millions of people are depending on this to be absolutely correct, but in most cases, it probably is. That's scary. And it found that in many instances, the information was not inaccurate. So in many instances, it wasn't inaccurate, which means in some instances, it was inaccurate. So this is not reassuring. Now, to be clear, that after this article came out, Google pulled the ability to get this information, these specific examples, they pulled those from AI overviews. But do we have to wait for journalists to find all the bad queries you give the AI system in order for the AI system to turn those off or to fix those? We shouldn't have to. We should be getting good information. And the fact that search engines are taking away more and more the ability to even find the answers and more going to the AI answer is a real problem. Because when it was just, I Googled something and then I went to the site and it was, WebMD or it was, some other site that I trusted, I would go there and look at it. And I even knew that, WebMD always told you had cancer, right? My nose is stuffed up. You probably have cancer. That was kind of the joke. But at the same time, when I go there, when I go to Mayo Clinic, when I go to other sites where I'm like, yes, this probably has the right information, I'm at least getting information that's been vetted by doctors, that's been vetted by, large studies. And yes, it may be wrong, as in they figure something out over time. That's how science works. But at the same time, I'm basing that off of the best information we have at this time, not basing it off of whatever the AI decided to say today. Because those answers, like Google said, the vast majority are correct. Many instances are correct. Because the AI does not give the same answer every time to the same question. If you ask the same question and you have all your friends ask the same question of AI, you will get different answers from your friends. Now, most of them may be the same or similar, but they won't be the same. And some will get answers that are just out of left field. Why? Because the AI, that's how it works. It's not designed to be I put in this question, I get back this specific answer. That's not how it works. But unfortunately, people are basing their health information off of this system. And it makes sense because, at least in the US, the health system is not free. Even in other countries where the health system may be free, the access may be slower than we'd like. And so going to a system that gives you immediate answers can feel like a shortcut. It can feel like the right way to go about things to get things moving. And it can work, but it's not always going to be right. And that can be a really bad thing. All right. And this is why. Okay. So AI fails at primary patient diagnosis more than 80% of the time. Now, I dug in this report because this paper, by the way, all links are down below. You can see down at the bottom of the screen. But I dug into this paper and the actual data behind it because I wasn't sure this is correct, right? What feels like the title is saying is that only 20% of the time do they get patient diagnosis correct. That's what they're saying. Now, let's look at what this says, okay? So what they did was they said AI chatbots have improved, which is terrifying to think they've improved and yet 80% are wrong. But they still fail to produce an appropriate differential diagnosis more than 80% of the time, meaning they were incorrect at producing a appropriate differential diagnosis 4 times out of 5. Now, what is this a study of? Well, this is based upon the JAMA Network Open Medical Journal, and it's based upon a study of 21 LLMs, the latest versions of Claude, DeepSeek, Gemini, GPT, and Grok. And they evaluated over 29 standardized clinical vignettes. Now, what this does is it evaluates them like a doctor, not just doing the testing, right? So if we have a test that, in school we have a test where it says A, B, C, or D, which is the right answer, or fill in the blank. This is often how we evaluate AIs. Fill in the blank or, complete this test. The problem is that's not how the real world works. And so what they said was, let's test the AIs like we test doctors for real world assessment. So there's different stages of clinical reasoning. This is where you get to kind of understand what this report is saying. So there's conducting an initial diagnosis. So you walk into the doctor's office, they initially diagnose you based upon certain information. Then ordering appropriate tests, meaning you walk in, and I'm not a doctor here, so this is not medical advice. But I limp in and my one leg is hanging funny because it really hurts. And they say, okay, let's order an x-ray. That's ordering appropriate tests. Now that x-ray should be of my leg, the one that I'm not on because I can't walk on it. It shouldn't be of my arm. It shouldn't be of the good leg, right? And then arriving at a final diagnosis. So order the appropriate tests and go, yep, I can see there's a break in your leg. That means you have a broken leg. That would be the final diagnosis. And then planning treatment, meaning, okay, what we're going to do is put a cast on your leg. Okay, those are the stages they're kind of evaluating the AI on. It's not just, with all of this information I present to you, if you say, hey, I have this x-ray of this leg and it shows this, and I have all this information of the patient, what do you think the diagnosis is? Because you've already gathered all the information. The problem is doctors don't get all the information up front. What they get is a patient that walks in and says, my leg hurts. And they have to figure it out from there. And so that's what they tested the AI on. So this is a stepwise fashion. Research moves past treating them like test takers and puts them in a doctor's position. So that's what I was saying. So these models are great at naming a final diagnosis. So back up, 4 times out of 5, they were incorrect. Yes, but not on final diagnosis, on the original diagnosis, the differential. So once the data is complete, again, doctors don't have patients walk in with the CAT scan, the MRI, and the X-ray done, the blood work done, all the rest. They don't walk in with that. They have to figure out what of those things are needed and why. All right. So AI struggle at the open-ended start of a case where there isn't much information. So do doctors, but this is what doctors do. This is why they go through medical school. This is why they learn to diagnose people. So the researchers found that all the models failed to produce an appropriate differential diagnosis more than 80% of the time. So that appropriate differential diagnosis was wrong a lot. 4 out of 5 times it was wrong. The final diagnosis, success rates range from about 60% to over 90%, depending on the model. Stop right there. First of all, one of the questions might come up is, well, then let's just skip all this diagnosis stuff and go right to the final diagnosis. But that's not how medicine works. You have to figure out what to do, the differential, in order to figure out how to order the right tests in order to get to the place of the final diagnosis. So you can't skip steps. And the AI is very, very, very bad at the earlier steps. Now, even though you say, well, you know what, over 90%, some models are over 90%, and they're the ones you'd probably expect, right? The latest version of, I think, Opus and GPT were up near the top there. So you might think, well, 90%. Okay, are you willing to, have an AI guess because it guesses right 9 out of 10 times? This is Russian roulette with our health. 90% is not good enough. So most LLMs show improved accuracy when provided with laboratory results and imaging in addition to text. When you give it all the information, then it can get a pretty good diagnosis. But here's the deal. When you give it all the information, you're pretty much already giving it the final diagnosis. It's just evaluating a little bit, right? If I walked in, you're the doctor, I walked into your office, I said, here's an x-ray of my right leg, here's all the information about why my right leg hurts. What's my diagnosis? How hard is it for that doctor? I mean, that doctor would be like, man, this is the easiest job ever. Because I look at the x-ray and go, yep, it's broken. You've got a broken leg. That's what the AI is, quote unquote, good at. But it's getting to that point that it's terrible at. So, this title, Sick and Wrong, Ontario auditors find doctors' AI note takers routinely blow basic facts. Okay, so we're kind of switching gears a little bit here, and that is that a lot of doctors now are using AI note takers, where the AI listens to the conversation and then diagnoses, or not diagnoses, but just gathers the information, right? So instead of the doctor typing in, okay, your leg hurts, okay, I'm ordering an x-ray, okay, I'm going to give you ibuprofen for the pain, right? Instead of putting all that in the computer, the AI does it for them. And it takes note. It says, the patient complained of right leg pain below the knee and, they were limping, etc. But in Ontario, they've been studying these AI note takers because they've been using it in testing cases. Major issues. 60% of evaluated AI scribe systems mixed up prescription drugs in patient notes. Do you want your patient notes to have the wrong prescription drugs listed? Do you think that's a good thing? Terrible, awful, horrible. This can cause massive issues. So the AI systems approved for Ontario healthcare providers routinely missed critical details, inserted incorrect information, and hallucinated content. That's the worst. Okay. Now, this is according to an audit of 20 approved vendor systems. So these are already approved, and this is an audit of them. Now, let's look at a bit more about this. They simulated doctor-patient recordings. So this is not about looking at actual patient solution. That's so much harder to do because of the fact that there is doctor-patient privilege and confidentiality. And you can't just come in and say, hey, can we evaluate to see if this is happening correctly? And we want to bring a whole bunch of people in and do a study on this. That's not something you really want to do. So it's a lot harder once these tools are in play to evaluate their effective performance, except through testing like this, where they simulate. And so what they did is they simulated doctor-patient recordings, and then a medical professional reviewed the original recording and the notes that the AI note taker took. Okay, let's look at 9 out of 20 reportedly fabricated information and made suggestions to patients' treatment plans that weren't discussed in the recordings. According to the report, evaluators spotted potentially devastating incorrect information in the sample reports, such as no mass is being found, which would mean there was, or patients being anxious, even though those things were never discussed in the recordings. So it's putting information in your report that wasn't there. It's changing the information that was there to maybe be the wrong information and causing other problems. 9 out of 20. 12 of the 20 inserted incorrect drug information into patients' notes, while 17 of the systems missed key details about the patient's mental health issues. 6 of the systems missed the patient's mental health issues fully or partially, or were missing key details. This is a major problem, not just because the AI note takers are doing things incorrectly. They're putting the wrong, medications on, they're missing things, they're putting things on there that weren't there, etc. But whenever you have something done for you and you have to review it, as I'm a developer, I come from a developer perspective. We look at code reviews, we have years of study that have proven that you don't review as well as you create. Meaning, if you're going to code something, you're going to do a better job of it versus if you're going to review something and try and find the problems. It's if your buddy gives you a long email to read over and say, hey, can you proofread this? You're going to miss some things probably because it's a whole lot easier to skim over. Your brain kind of, hits the high spots and goes, yeah, looks good. And that's what can happen with doctors too. When doctors are so busy that they're moving from patient to patient to patient, how often do you think they're going to go back right after the appointment, go back and look at that and verify point by point that everything is perfect? Practically non-existent. Because imagine even if at the end of the day, the doctor says, I'm going to review all the notes. That doctor may have seen 10 patients that day. Do you think they'll be precise in their memory? Or they look at something and say, I don't know if we talked about that or not, but I guess we did because it's in the notes. So now all of a sudden the AI notes are going to become the source of truth rather than what the actual doctor said to do. And that's a big problem. So this is the wrap up of this. Remember, this was a simulated doctor-patient conversation. They did something where they recorded an actual conversation, but it was not a real doctor-patient conversation. This has already been in place in production with real patients for over 5,000 physicians in Ontario. And according to them, there are no known reports of patient harms. Now, they found massive issues in, 9 out of 12, or 20, 12 out of 20, 17 out of 20, 6 out of 20. Like, a number of these systems had major issues in testing when they actually compared this. But in production, with more than 5,000 doctors using it, there's been no known issues. So there's only a couple of reasons why that might happen. One is maybe that they've got lucky. Maybe they're more rigorous in their testing and, we're trying to trick it more often. That could be, but based upon how we've seen AI usage, that's probably not the case. Or the other issue is that there are issues, they haven't been caught. Because how would you know if there's issues? It's only if something happened and the doctor caught it. And those things don't happen, first of all, right away. Because it's going to depend on the doctor going, wait, that's not right. Or the patient going, wait, that's not right. But that doesn't happen immediately. That might even happen for months or even a year or two before they figure out that something doesn't seem right. And by that point, everyone's brain's a little fuzzy. They go, maybe I wasn't that medication. Or maybe I did, have that test and or maybe I did have anxiety. So no known reports doesn't mean there's been no issues. It just means we haven't found them. Okay, here's an audit of the clinical AI. This is from Harvard Science Review, the first real audit of clinical AI. So for the past 5 years, the narrative surrounding artificial intelligence in medicine has been one of breathless inevitability. I think that was a really good phrase to highlight. This is what's been coming about. People are saying how AI is going to revolutionize healthcare. So they did a study between Harvard Medical School and Stanford University. They asked a question the industry has avoided. Is it actually working? Because there's all this hype. There's all these companies that are saying how great the medical advances are going to be, but yet, is it actually working? Well, let's look at that in this State of Clinical AI 2026. So the FDA, as of January 2026, has cleared over 1,200 AI-enabled medical devices, which, first of all, just terrifies me. But okay, there's been 1,200 AI medical devices cleared. Less than 15% of them are used routinely. Why? Well, according to them, the first issue is that the interfaces are bad. And it says the friction is winning. The friction of using these tools is winning, which that's an easy problem or easy-ish problem in theory because, well, you just build a better UI or build a better process. The example down below is the algorithm may be 99% accurate at detecting nodules on a CT scan, but it requires a radiologist to click through 3 different login screens to see the results. Yeah, that's frustrating. And, it's probably one of those logins where it's like, you have to log in a different way and do a rain dance first and all the rest in order to try and get in. And that's frustrating. I don't like those trying to get into Microsoft Teams, let alone to do my job. So yes, the friction is winning, and that can be a problem that can be solved with just better systems. But sometimes that friction isn't there for a reason, because remember, again, someone should be a human in the loop because AI hallucinates. And so if you make it too easy where you go, yep, and all of a sudden 3 different scans are gone, well, then you may have had a problem where you go, I approve something that the AI did incorrectly. So we do want some friction in the system. But yes, friction is a problem. However, because of that friction, among other things, there's been a surge in physicians using unauthorized tools on personal devices. This is, the simplistic example would be a doctor using ChatGPT on their phone. Now, there's other systems like OpenEvidence and others that they can use. But I highlighted this because I think it's really important. They're choosing speed over compliance. Now, as we saw earlier, AI systems give out bad advice. Google was saying that kidney patients should avoid a high-fat diet, which could kill them, right? So these are bad things that these AIs are saying, and yet doctors are bypassing their own AI systems because they're too cumbersome and going right to the consumer ones, which in theory, the medical ones should be better at having guardrails in place. But again, those guardrails are just suggestions. But even so, those suggestions are better than what we have in the open space. And they're choosing speed over compliance. That to me, again, terrifies me because if my health depends on you going faster by using an AI that might be wrong, might be hallucinating right now, that's not a good thing. I don't feel like I'm going to have better outcomes because of that. So now this doctor highlights the issue. I have 15 minutes per patient, which is already a bad thing. But if the hospital's approved AI takes 2 minutes to load, I'm not using it. I'm using an app on my phone that gives me the answer in 5 seconds. It's not about rebellion, it's about survival. I get that. I get that you need to move quickly. The problem is that what they're seeing is they're saying, well, this is faster. But what they're not saying is that is this as just as good of an answer? You have to know that answer is correct. And if that answer is not going to be correct all the time, but you're moving so fast, are you going to stop and say, I don't think that answer is correct? Or are you going to be just moving so fast you go, okay, that's what we're going to do. And follow the AI advice. And now you're letting the AI lead in medical decisions when the AI is not a physician. It's now nowhere near as good as a physician. And it's going to give out hallucinated answers. Not all the time, but just enough to cause patients to be hurt and even killed. Now, the audit also highlights, and this is why it's even more important, the audit also highlights a technical phenomenon known as clinical drift, a term that he asked about. Several high-profile sepsis prediction models, so it's predicting whether a patient gets sepsis, which performed beautifully in 2023, have seen their accuracy degrade by nearly 20% in 2026. So the models that were working great in 2023 are not in 2026. Why? Because hospital protocols changed, patient demographics shifted, and the viruses evolved. But the static AI models did not update to match the new reality. Life is not about putting everything on pause. Nothing new gets learned as of a point in time. Things change. And in the medical field, things change a lot. And this is why doctors are constantly learning new things, looking at new medical journals, reading over new studies, and trying to evolve over time. This is why we don't use leeches in medicine, because we evolve over time, go, that was dumb, and move on to what the latest information is. And again, physicians aren't always right because the things they've studied aren't always correct, but they're very, 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 very good. And it's based upon the best information we have as of now. And things change over time. Like it says, viruses evolve, demographics change, protocols change. And so the result is that what was a good diagnostic tool no longer is. These models degrade instead of learn. They're not learning and growing like a doctor is. They're degrading over time. So even the medically approved systems are degrading over time. And doctors are too busy to even use those systems. And so they're going to the private, the personal systems that aren't even trained to be as good as the medical systems and using them instead, which is, again, degrading over time as well. It's a recipe for a disaster. So now this person says, we're entering a phase of implementation science. The next $1 billion shouldn't be spent on making algorithms smarter. It should be spent on making them usable. Sounds great. But I highlighted this last phrase. It's not part of the quote. It's part of the author of this article's quote. Maybe we should make sure they work first. Yes, it sounds great to say we should, make these AI systems usable, but they already aren't great. They're not working yet. So to make them more easy to use would just mean they get used more when they are drifting away from even where they were, which wasn't correct very much. Okay. So the percentages of how these systems work get worse and worse over time. They were never great to begin with in a lot of areas. And so we're in a place where we're trying to make AIs more enabled for medical use. And yet these AIs they're not doing a good job to begin with. They're not doctors. There's a reason why we need to have a human in the loop on everything. And it's because these AI systems hallucinate. They are based upon bad training data. The training data is stale by the time it's actually being used, and it gets more stale over time. It doesn't take in variables about the hospital protocols and other things that can affect the outcomes and so many other circumstances. So both on the personal side as well as the corporate side of healthcare, AIs are not good for addressing our healthcare. They're not good systems. Yes, they can be 90% effective. That's not good enough. And the fact is that 90% is usually only in certain circumstances. They get a lot worse when they have more variables to work with. So what can we do? Because this is a problem and our healthcare will get worse because of it. We've seen software get worse, and that's a real problem because we've seen more bugs, we've seen more viruses, we've seen more attacks where we've lost data, etc. But it's software, right? Like at the end of the day, yes, I don't want my data stolen. And I want to make sure my software is protected, my computer is protected, etc. But when it comes to my health, I don't want the same things to happen. I don't want people to go, oops, yeah, we kind of made healthcare worse there for a few years. I don't want that. So what can we do? Number one, we need to push for consequences for bad AI medical advice. If a company like Google or Bing or any other company is going to give out medical advice, there needs to be consequences for it being wrong. Now, if you have, and this is hard to do because, if I have a blog where I say, this is what I think about medicine, I think that we should all go back to eating hay. I don't know. That's a horrible example. But, if I said that, there's no consequences for me other than people saying you're a little loopy, right? But when an AI says, this is what you should do, it's giving out medical advice. And there should be some consequences for that. Because if it pointed you to medical organizations who say this is what you should do based upon the information we have, you could read more about it. You could verify the sources. You could, look to see if you trust those hospitals or doctors or whoever did a study. And you can look at the study and say, hey, it was a study of 20 people. That's not really a great study. Versus that study studied 5,000 people, and that seems more consequential. This was, double blind and all the rest. You can make those decisions if you have the information and if you are basing it off of people you trust. But the AI hides all of that. So I think we should need to push for more consequences for bad medical advice from AIs. Number one. Number two, we need to use existing data protection laws to their full extent. There are laws in the book that can help with some of this, and we need to use those to their full extent. We cannot back off and say, well, yeah, but it's LLM companies, they're too big. We got to be able to hold their feet to the fire and say, no, if you're going to be in this field, you need to have some level of accountability. In too many ways, we allow these LLMs to be unaccountable to anyone, and that's not okay, because they are causing problems both personally as well as corporately in healthcare. Number three, don't sign your rights away. So doctors' offices more and more are using AI systems for note-taking. But legally, at least in the US, and I believe in Europe and other places, they have to give you the option of opting out. Do so. Because first of all, we've seen those AI note-takers aren't always going to be perfect. They're going to be less than ideal. And if that happens, then you may be given wrong medicine. You may be not given medicine you should have been given. You may not be diagnosed for something you should be diagnosed for. You may have information in your file that could endanger you in other ways that could, put your children at risk or other things where if it comes out, well, this person is, mentally unstable. Why? Because the AI hallucinated that. That's not okay. That could put you in real danger. So don't sign your rights away. Also, with that, a lot of these systems don't work on site. So if you have a doctor doing AI note-taking, probably what they're doing is recording that and sending it off to a third-party facility. Do you want that? Do you want your healthcare information sent off to a place where it may be AI is scanning that? It may be people listening to it. I don't want that. Okay, so don't sign your rights away. Number four, let's make AI usage painful in the healthcare industry. I really think we need to make it painful, because if we make it too easy to just use AI wherever you want in healthcare, we're going to have the same degradation in experience as the software industry has had, as a lot of other industries have had. And the problem is, it's not something we go, whoopsie, we've got a problem. It's whoopsie, you now have cancer. Or whoopsie, we didn't catch that cancer in time. Or whoopsie, we gave the wrong medication, now you have an allergic reaction. Like, these are all major problems that can happen. We need to make sure that we make it painful for AI to be in the medical space, not because we don't want anything in the medical space, but because we want to make sure that it's used properly and used in a way that is going to be beneficial to us long term, not just rushed in the door because it makes those companies extra money. Because right now it feels like everything is being rushed. We should not be rushing our healthcare. Our healthcare should be something where we really make sure we do it right the first time. We shouldn't be moving fast and breaking things when it comes to healthcare. All right. Thanks for listening. And as always, I am Tim Corey.